If you and your spouse have made the difficult and painful decision to divorce, and you're really committed to doing it in a way that protects your children, preserves your assets, and avoids unnecessary conflict, this video is for you. I'm Regina. I spent 18 years as a divorce attorney, and I've helped hundreds of couples through the divorce process, including many high net worth families who were very high conflict at the start. And what we've learned is that you can totally peacefully and privately move through the process without ever stepping foot in a courtroom. What I'm about to share could save you tens of thousands of dollars, months of emotional strain, and years of legal fallout. These are the 5 things every couple should know before filing for divorce, especially if you want to protect what matters most, which is your kids. Number 1, the first professional you hire will shape everything about your process. Most people assume that the first step is to call a lawyer, and I understand why you would, right? I was a divorce attorney for 18 years, but here's what most couples don't realize until it's too late. That first decision sets the tone for everything that comes after, okay? So when you hire an attorney, the process becomes adversarial by default. You're now 2 opposing parties in a legal dispute. You stop talking directly to each other at the recommendation of your attorney and just communicate through those. Often that advocacy on their part leads to escalation of tension. Even if you want a peaceful divorce, the system just isn't designed that way. It's about paperwork, arguing, and positioning your best foot forward. It turns something that's emotional and personal into something legal and public. Most couples are really blindsided by how quickly things spiral out of control and really become adversarial. One filing by your lawyer leads to another, one letter leads to another, and before you know it, the tension is through the roof, and so are your legal fees. And now it feels like you're not filing or solving a problem together, but you're instead stuck in a legal battle. Yet here's the truth. When you first call is to a mediator, someone who's trained to guide both spouses through the process, make sure you don't forget anything, make sure you're doing this one step at a time so you don't get overwhelmed. Instead of escalation, it feels like you have structure and a plan. Instead of, opposing positions, you get problem solving. Instead of legal posturing, you get real creative solutions that match your family. Mediation doesn't require you to agree on everything. It really just requires you to want to figure out a respectful solution and to be willing to sit at the table. So if you remember nothing else from this video, remember this, okay? The first professional you hire doesn't just advise you, they set the emotional tone, set the financial cost, and the legal direction of your entire divorce. All right. So number 2, divorce attorneys are going to cost you between $30,000 and $80,000. Let's talk about the real cost of divorce because most couples have no idea. When you hire a divorce attorney, you're usually asked to pay a retainer up front. It's about $5,000. In higher income households or households with complicated asset pictures, it can easily be $7,500 to $10,000 a person. And that's just the first payment. After that, the expense skyrockets and continues to accrue throughout the process. All right. So that first payment does not mean it's all it's going to cost you. In a contested divorce, which just means you and your spouse don't have everything figured out at the beginning, which is mostly everybody, it can easily be between $30,000 and $50,000 a couple. If the case drags on and you need a judge to listen to your arguments and make a decision, you could easily be spending $80,000 as a family. And those numbers are not just anecdotal, okay? Those are real expenses that real families pay. According to 2025 legal data, the average divorce in the United States now costs between $15,000 and $20,000. And those are for those cases where we've got everything figured out. We don't need help figuring out our parenting plan or post-divorce support. So the more you fight, the more expensive it gets, and it gets expensive fast. and you're not paying for results. You're paying for the time, the emails, the court prep, the letters back and forth. The longer it drags out, the less control you have over how that money gets used. The most painful part is that it's literally just gone. You're not buying another house. You're not getting anything for your money. You still have to figure out how to get budgets in two separate households. And so you're really just paying to divide what you already have and not plan for your future. And when it's over, regardless of who won, what you're left with is emotional destruction. You're absolutely financially and emotionally depleted and more resentful at the end than you were at the beginning. Mediation, on the other hand, resolves all of your issues, parenting plan, the support, the asset division at a fraction of the cost. And instead of spending $30,000, you're spending a small percentage of that, creating agreements that actually work and meet the needs and plans of your family. So this isn't about cutting corners. It's about protecting your resources so you have money so that you can move forward and create a new stable household. So number 3, you're going to want to protect what you built, and you can, without destroying each other. By the time most couples consider divorce, you've been through a lot. Years, often decades of building a lifetime together, a home, a family, community ties, financial stability, and your memories are all intertwined. And when that life is coming to an end, it can feel like everything has to be torn apart just so you can figure out how to move forward. And that's what the traditional model would have you expect. But here's the truth. I want you to hear this very clearly. Divorce does not have to mean destruction, all right? What most couples I work with aren't looking to ruin each other. They're not out for revenge. They are exhausted and overwhelmed and sad, and they're uncertain about what comes next. And unfortunately, when they step into a system with lawyers that feeds those emotions, and it just turns all of that fear into anger and conflict. But the end of a marriage doesn't have to mean the end of your dignity or your stability and the stability of your children, all right? You don't have to burn everything down just to close that chapter. You can protect your kids and you can preserve your home and financial future. You just choose to part ways with intention, not destruction. And you choose to create a transition. And no, that doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. You're still allowed to grieve. You're allowed to be angry. And you're allowed to feel heartbreak. And of course, you're going to likely feel all of those things. But if you don't have to let those emotions drive legal decisions, that would leave you both worse off for years to come. So now we're on to number 4. Conflict, not divorce, is what harms children most. And there is a common fear, a common assumption among parents, this is going to mess up our kids. Okay? It's a valid question. Valid concern. But what the research and decades of real life experience consistently show is that it's not having two divorced parents, two households that causes lasting damage to children. It's the conflict of the process, the tension, the fighting, the instability that it causes, the feeling of them being caught in the middle. And that often lasts for decades after the divorce because of the fallout. There's a study from Arizona State University that shows the conflict between parents causes fear of abandonment. It's a direct predictor of what your children's mental health, may be in the future. I've worked with families where the legal process dragged on for years with multiple court dates, attorney letters, and custody disputes. Even when parents tried to shield their kids, the emotional toll seeped through. Our children can feel the energy in the house. They can feel your sadness and stress. When children are exposed to that kind of environment, it creates confusion and emotional insecurity that absolutely can follow them into adulthood. But it doesn't have to be that way. When divorce is handled with structure and you guys have a plan and respect and clear communication, the kids adjust. They feel safe. They may still feel sadness and grief. That's completely normal. Everybody is, right? but they're learning that we will recover and that we are going to be okay and that my family is still a team, even if we're in two households. And that's the difference that mediation makes, because mediation keeps conversations focused on solutions. You think of it as problem solving, not hurling accusation. It gives you space to make parenting decisions that are really intentional and prioritizing your children's well-being over any sort of legal posturing or strategy. And then those parenting plans really fit you and your kids' needs. So even though a marriage is ending, your family isn't falling apart, and your kids will have this security of knowing that you're still showing up for them with maturity, love, and clarity, and you're protecting what matters most. All right, and our last one, number 5, divorce is an emotional process, but the legal decisions that come from it are usually permanent. And so when you're in the middle of a divorce, of course your emotions are running high. You're still feeling hurt. You might be betrayed, angry. You're certainly terrified. And sometimes all of those things at the same time. And that is normal. This is one of the most emotionally charged experiences a person can go through. So recognizing that that emotional journey is part of the process is really important. And here's what you need to be aware of, though. When you're making big lifetime decisions from that place, emotional turmoil, sometimes you don't make the decision that you might want. So you have to recognize that when you make, decisions on who's keeping what, that's usually permanent. Creating a parenting plan, those things are binding for a very long time. And so many of those decisions in traditional divorce are made under incredibly high stress and high pressure circumstances. And so we don't have time to process and grieve and really come to a place of being centered because we just want it over. So mediation gives you that time, and you're allowed and you should process all of your decisions. After a session, you want to think through what comes next. You don't want to make decisions out of guilt, out of just wanting it to be done or just wanting peace. And on the other hand, you don't want to let the emotional piece drag something out and have you dig your heels in just because, right? So it's being aware of balancing that. And that's one of the most important truths for you to understand. Divorce is emotional and legal, and you've got to make sure that you're nurturing and paying attention to both sides. All right. So sometimes you can separate the emotion to make really grounded decisions, and other times you need to process that emotion in other places. And a good mediator can help you figure all of that out. So you want to think long term and think of your divorce process and your mediation process as planning for what I want my family to look like in the future. How do you want to operate? So now you've learned the 5 things that most people don't know until it's too late. And if you've made it this far, I'm guessing you're interested in avoiding a messy and expensive, drawn-out legal battle. You want to protect your children. You want to preserve what you've built. You want to move forward with as little damage as possible. And that's exactly why I left the courtroom and retired from family law. It's why I created Family Transitions, Divorce Coaching, and Mediation. After nearly 2 decades in that world as a divorce attorney and then going through my own divorce, I just saw how destructive the legal system was for families who didn't belong there. So Family Transitions gives people something better. And I think most couples would choose a better option if they knew there was one. So I created it. It's not court-appointed mediation. It's not a random name you find in a Google search. Family Transitions is different because it is a structured, step-by-step process that is designed specifically for families who want a peaceful, private, but legally sound resolution. They want to maintain control and really plan what their future looks like as they transition to 2 households. This is the process that my team and I have used to help nearly 1,000 families in the last decade divorce with clarity and compassion and confidence. So if you want to understand how that process works and whether it could be right for your situation, I walk you through that full framework in the free training at the link below. It's the next step and it's completely free. And if you're ready to, keep learning and investigating what the right path is for you, and you're interested in preserving your family's dignity, even though separation is the right next thing, feel free to watch the next video.